The Jets cannot draft Dante Moore or any other quarterback for that matter unless they start holding their coaching staff to a much higher standard and that coaching staff has a plan for the quarterback's development. Locked On Jets starts now.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, January 13th, 2025, and I'm your host, John B. from GanggreenNation.com. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. A big shout out to you everydayers. If you're new to the show, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Well, I hope you enjoyed Wild Card Weekend. The NFL playoffs got underway with games on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. The Jets were not part of them. This is the 15th straight year that the Jets have missed the playoffs. On today's show, we're going to talk about 3 things that need to change in this franchise for the Jets to get back to the playoffs in 2026 and beyond. This coaching staff has to start being held to a higher standard. The Jets need a real detailed plan if they draft a quarterback early this year, and the overall philosophy of the organization needs to change. Let's start by talking about the coaching staff. Well, I hope you enjoyed the 6 games over Wild Card Weekend. I have to tell you, I really did. That was my favorite weekend of NFL watching all season long. And I think the reason for that is obvious. And I'm not trying to make jokes at the Jets' expense. I'm not trying to say, I didn't have to watch the Jets. It was nice to be able to watch teams that execute at a fundamental level. It was nice to watch teams that understand how to play situational football. It was nice to be able to watch teams that look like they have leadership. That's not something we saw from the New York Jets in 2025 as they stumbled to a 3-14 season. And I have said a lot about the coaching staff on this show over the last couple of weeks, and I will continue to do it because I think the coaching performance for this team in 2025 was simply unacceptable. And I think part of the problem is that expectations were really low going into the season, so people kind of gave them a pass. And then they traded 2 of their key players at the deadline. So people continued to give them a pass. Then it kind of looked like, well, the Jets want to lose games for draft positioning. So they got even more of a pass going forward. What I really dislike, though, is it feels like the Jets want people to view the season in context, but only when the context favors them. Look, I'm not sitting here saying that the Jets should have been a playoff team this year. I'm not sitting here saying they should have had a winning record. You can go back through the course of last offseason. I readily admitted those things. But I wanted the Jets to look like a team that was moving in the right direction. It's not just about the record. That's something we said before the season. We said that the Jets could have a successful season, even if the record wasn't that great. That means that the games can't solely be judged on whether you win or lose. But it cuts both ways. Just because you're expecting losses doesn't mean every kind of loss is acceptable. Because it simply can't be. The Jets lost 5 straight games to end the season by 23-plus points. I don't think people appreciate how hard that is to do in the NFL. It's never been done before. We've had a lot of lousy Jets teams in this town recently. We've had a lot of lousy Jets teams historically. There are lots of terrible teams across the NFL. No Jets team, no NFL team's ever done that before, losing 5 straight games by 23-plus points. There have been lots of teams that have played unplayable quarterbacks. Brady Cook's not the first terrible quarterback to play. There have been lots of teams that have been decimated by injuries and weren't that good to begin with and didn't have depth and had to play practice squad level players in the defensive backfield. They didn't lose 5 straight games by 23-plus points. I'm not talking about losing 1 game or 2 games by 23-plus points. I'm talking about 5 games. It's unacceptable. Rich Kotite's teams never did that. Adam Gase's teams never did that. Todd Bowles' teams never did that. So the Jets want context when it favors them. We didn't have a lot of talent going in. You got to give the coaching staff some slack. I give them slack. But, if all losses aren't created equally, we can't treat a 30-point loss as the same as a 1-point loss. You could, when you're a rebuilding team, a 1-point loss, I'm not going to say it's a moral victory or it should be a moral victory, but you can at least understand why a team loses. You can at least take positives from it. You can't take positives from anything the Jets did down the stretch. And with Aaron Glenn and this coaching staff, it reached a point I haven't seen since John Idzik was here as the general manager. In 2014, Idzik did such a terrible job that people just logically could not compute that the GM could be that bad. And they essentially came up with a theory that, well, Idzik made the team terrible on purpose so that they could fire Rex Ryan and he could bring his own coach in. That's kind of the point we reached at the end of the season with the Jets, where people said, well, the Jets just are losing these games in blowout fashion on purpose to get a better draft pick. That's a flawed strategy. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the performance is miserable. And I compare it with the team I watched on Sunday, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars lost to the Bills, but in context, this Jaguars season was a phenomenal success for them. They won the AFC South when nobody was expecting it. They ended the season on a hot streak. And yes, they lost to the Bills, but they were right there with the Bills. This was not 2 blowout losses. It wasn't getting wiped off the face of the earth like the Jets were week 2 and week 18. And I think about where that Jaguars team was in 2024. That Jaguars team was every bit the disaster the Jets were. In fact, they may have been worse. They were worse. They had a worse record. They lost to the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams Jets, which was no small feat. It was very difficult to lose to the Jets in the Aaron Rodgers. It was in the Aaron Rodgers era. They found a way to do it. And within 1 year, they were in the playoffs. And they were a trendy pick to go to the Super Bowl. If they had not run into Josh Allen, they very easily could have gone on a run. They just ran into a tough first-round matchup, and they lost a coin toss game. You can live with that. I look at the Jaguars, and I see this team that turned it around overnight. And I'm not saying, and again, like I understand context. I'm not saying the Jets should have won the AFC East this year. I'm not saying they should have been a playoff team. I'm not saying they should have been a team that was favored to go to the Super Bowl if they made the playoffs. But I'm asking myself, if the Jaguars can go from as bad as the Jets last year, and frankly, worse than the Jets last year, to a difficult playoff team this year, why can't the Jets do better than what they did? With the Jaguars, it's like overnight, we're a contender. With the Jets, it's, well, maybe in 3 years we'll be competitive. Aaron Glenn at his end of season press conference made a comment that he thinks the fans should believe in his plan for the team. He didn't elaborate on the plan, though. I asked, what's the plan? To be leading a game by a quarter within 3 years? The Jets, of course, made 2 big trades at the deadline. They traded Sauce Gardner to Indianapolis and Quinnen Williams to Dallas. Those were 2 of their 3 best players. And we can debate the merits, the good, the bad of these trades. We can debate whether or not they were the right moves. I have my doubts. I'll be honest with you. I spoke for months about why I did not think the Jets should tear the team down. I try and give you like a glass half full version of events on this podcast, though, because there's enough suffering around the Jets fan base. I think there's a path for these deals to be very successful. I think if there's a plan to reallocate your resources to build around a new quarterback, then I can get behind that plan. I don't love it. I think that there are some real concerns with the Jets trading away 2 of their 3 best players. One of them is I feel like it almost gives the coaching staff a blank check to lose games. It's almost like it takes the pressure off the coaching staff to put out a representative product on the field, because it becomes a built-in excuse. Well, we traded our best players. We were thinking long-term. And this is one of my issues with the Jets, where they always are telling you, just look to the future. In a few years, this is all going to pay off. And that's fine, but there's no reason things need to get this miserable in the present. There's a difference between being a contender overnight and showing progress. I want to see progress. We saw no progress this year. So I think that we need to understand that even though a season can't all be judged by wins and losses, it cuts both ways. You can't just give a team and a coaching staff a blanket excuse when they play as miserably as the Jets did this year. And these playoffs, they're a reminder of that, because there are a number of teams in these playoffs that have looked miserable in seasons in recent memory. And the Jacksonville Jaguars come to the top of mind because they were picking pretty high in the NFL draft last year, and they lost a game to the Jets. So I think that a lot has to change in the organization. But one thing that I really think has to change is they have to stop giving a free pass to the coaching staff, and they have to stop with the whole idea that, well, you can't judge these guys for years. Look, that doesn't mean I'm not saying you get fired every year you have a bad season, but there are progress reports, and this progress report's not very good. And that leads me into what the Jets do at the quarterback position. And during the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about Dante Moore, who is a contender for the Jets at the number 2 overall selection. I have doubts about Moore. I've talked about them a lot over the last couple of days on the show, but one thing I will say definitively, The Jets better have a very detailed plan for how they handle Dante Moore, and that includes what happens if things don't go according to plan. I'll explain what that means as we continue here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed-sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Quo makes everything simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you have not already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. It includes access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Jets, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app, along with an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for listeners of this show. Go to LockedOnNYJets.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. And today on Locked On Jets, we're talking about things that need to change for the New York Jets. This was a very disappointing season for this team, and there were not high expectations entering the season. Nobody thought they were going to be a winning team. Nobody thought that they were going to end their playoff drought at 14. At the same time, I don't think anybody expected that the Jets would end up with a worse point differential than the Rich Kotite 1996 Jets. I don't think anybody thought that the Jets would end the season with 0 interceptions or no 400-yard receivers. It was a really ugly season. Now, one of the silver linings, you might say, is that the Jets ended with the #2 pick in the NFL draft. And there is a lot of speculation. It could be Oregon quarterback Dante Moore, a player we have discussed quite a bit on this podcast over the last couple of days. I offered some skepticism about this idea yesterday. And part of my concern is that the Jets may not be set up to help a young quarterback develop. But it goes deeper than just the logistics of where the Jets are right now. It's about the mindset of this organization. And I think it's fair to say that when a quarterback is drafted, there's a real danger in thinking that that's the entire rebuild for your team. If your team needs work and you draft a quarterback, then that's it. Then the quarterback's drafted, everything is saved. Everything's different. That's a mindset a lot of teams have. And there are too many coaching staffs out there that view the quarterback as a golden ticket. A guy drafting a quarterback saves your career. And it can be true. If you draft a superstar quarterback, it's a career maker for a GM or a head coach. The problem is that there are too many people running NFL teams who view the quarterback through that lens. The way you have to view a quarterback is someone who can help your team, a critical component, an essential component. In the long run, you cannot win in the NFL unless you have a quarterback. But many quarterbacks enter the NFL and they need help. They need their team to help them as much as they're expected to help their team. And when you run into a coaching staff and a front office who are on the hot seat, far too often they draft a quarterback thinking the quarterback's going to save their jobs. And you've seen that over and over in the league. I mean, you can go down the list of teams that have failed quarterbacks. And I'm a firm believer at this point, and I've changed my mind on this through the years, that there are more young quarterbacks who are failed by the teams that draft them than who fail the teams that draft them. And I think that there are too many situations where teams don't go in with a plan for how to develop their quarterback. And this is the danger with Dante Moore. So as we discussed yesterday, he's a guy with only 20 starts in college. And if you look through the history of highly drafted quarterbacks who had less than 20 starts, it's not a great list. It's a really ugly list. And there's a reason for that. This is not just a coincidence. You get experience in college, and it teaches you how to read defenses. And college defenses are less complex than the NFL. So you want to enter the NFL understanding how to read a college defense, because it's only going to get tougher. If you haven't mastered a college defense by the time you reach the NFL, you're really in over your head. And that's not to say a quarterback can't be successful, but it means the team needs to be smart about how the quarterback is handled. Now, of course, it's possible Dante Moore steps up and he's an exception to the rule. The Jets draft him. He plays great right out of the gate. He's a natural. He figures out how to read coverages immediately. That's great if it happens, but you can't plan on the best case scenario. As an NFL team, your job is to plan for the worst case scenario. And too many times NFL teams have a plan A. Our quarterback's going to be awesome immediately, and there's no plan B. The Jets need to be prepared to sit Dante Moore if they draft him. And beyond that, they need to continue to examine how well he's doing, because I think that there are lots of quarterbacks who struggle as rookies and their teams do them no favors. I'll give you an example. The Jets in 2021 with Zach Wilson. Now, it was clear that the Jets' philosophy heading into 2021 at quarterback and across the board was they knew they weren't going to be very good. So they just decided to throw as many young players out there as possible, get them as many game reps as possible, and hope they improved. Sounds similar because it was kind of the Jets' approach in 2025. Zach Wilson was part of that mix. They handed them the starting job after picking him second overall. As we got deeper into the 2021 season, it became clear that Zach Wilson was not ready to play quarterback in the NFL. And it became clear to me that the Jets really would be well advised to bring in competition for the starting job in 2022. But that doesn't happen in the NFL. And the way the NFL thinks is that if you bring in competition for a quarterback you just drafted last year, that means you're giving up on him. And that's the wrong mindset to have. That's something we're also seeing right now with the Tennessee Titans. There were reports over the weekend that one of the first questions the Titans are asking coaching candidates is, what are you going to do with Cam Ward? And it sounds natural at first. It sounds like something that makes sense at first blush. But sometimes the best thing for the quarterback is to sit. And sometimes the best thing for the quarterback is counterintuitive to what we might think. Because while on some level, I can understand why you'd think, okay, benching the quarterback after 1 year, that's a sign of no confidence. It could also just be a sign that, we evaluated our quarterback this year and realized that, he'd be better served taking a step back. I think that NFL teams are too hesitant to do that because I think, first of all, again, the message that's received across the league is we don't believe in the guy. And beyond that, it's kind of an admission that you made a mistake. But it's better to admit that you made a mistake than to power through with a mistake. And the mistake isn't necessarily that you drafted a bad quarterback. It's that maybe you just drafted someone too high. Maybe you overestimated a player's ability to be ready to play. There's nothing wrong with sitting a quarterback after year one and giving him a chance to get a breather and learn from the sideline and learn in practice. It's not ideal. In an ideal world, the NFL would have some sort of developmental league to get these guys game reps. But too often what happens with these quarterbacks, I think, is teams see what they want to see. They find some stretch of good play and they talk themselves into believing there's more there than there really was. They talk themselves into believing our quarterback really made progress down the stretch. That happened with Zach Wilson in 2021. The numbers didn't back it up, but the Jets claim that he got better the second half of the year. And they have too much confidence in the quarterback going forward. And the real problem with that is you're not doing the quarterback any favors when you approach things like that. Because what eventually happens is the quarterback struggles and he becomes public enemy number one. Your team starts losing games. The quarterback gets criticized nonstop. He loses all of his confidence, and confidence is really important for a young quarterback. I think that we underestimate how big of a deal it is to not lose confidence. Early in that season in 2022, the Jets were winning games because Breece Hall, it's easy to forget how dominant Breece Hall was that first half of his rookie season. Breece Hall was running the ball so well, they didn't need to throw. And the defense was playing so well that, they didn't really need a lot from their passing game. But Breece Hall got injured. Eventually, the Jets started losing games because of Zach Wilson. Soon he was benched, and soon it felt like his Jets career was over, that his confidence was completely gone, that he needed a change of scenery. So your evaluations of your quarterback need to be ongoing, and you need to have a plan B if the quarterback doesn't succeed. There was another option for the Jets after 2021 when Zach Wilson had a rough season. There were opportunities to trade for big-time receivers. They had an opportunity to trade for A.J. Brown. They had an opportunity to trade for Amari Cooper. They could have gotten both those guys. Now, the A.J. Brown would have cost them the pick they used to draft Garrett Wilson, but if your mindset was that we needed to save Zach Wilson, they should have gone out and gotten two big-time receivers. Make life simple on the quarterback. You know what? No matter what, your first read is going to be open, and if one of the guys is double team, throw to the other guy. That would have made life much easier on Zach. Maybe in the long run, they're better off having Garrett Wilson than they would have been with A.J. Brown, at least in the wide receiver position. But, you have to think in these things through. You have to think that the quarterback, developing him is your number one priority. And sometimes that means saving the quarterback from himself, not putting the quarterback on the field too early. Or if you do put the quarterback on the field and it looks like he struggles, backing off of it and maybe moving him to the bench, giving him a chance to reset from the sideline. I think that there are many examples. I mean, the Zach Wilson one's the most obvious. The Cam Ward one's right in front of us. But there are too many teams that are too hesitant to do the right thing by their quarterback because they're afraid of criticism. That's not something the Jets could do. The Jets need to figure out a plan if they draft Dante Moore. And they need to constantly reevaluate. And they need to do what's right for Dante Moore. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we've talked about the coaching staff needing to be held to a higher standard. We've talked about the Jets needing to have a plan for the quarterback. But on a big picture level, the Jets just can't keep doing the same old thing, because for the last 15 years, they've been in the same cycle, and they got to break it. They got to start doing things the way the successful franchises do in the NFL. We'll talk about what that means continuing here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. It provides unlimited payroll for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save you hours every week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. The divisional round is coming, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a Profit Boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple Profit Boosts you can apply to the bet you like most. Open your Profit Boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Tuesday. We're talking about things that need to change for the New York Jets going forward. And let's face it, a lot needs to change. This team has now missed the playoffs 15 straight years. They have had a losing record for 10 straight seasons. And it seems to me this team just keeps going around in circles. We see the same cycle over and over and over. You know, I keep hearing people say, well, the Jets have tried everything. I don't think that's really true. I think we've just seen the Jets try the same things that don't work in the NFL. And it's been frustrating for me to watch because you look at the way the great franchises operate. They do things completely different from the way the Jets do. And the Jets act like their struggles have been about nothing other than bad luck. And that's not to say there's been no bad luck along the way. Obviously, there's been bad luck. I mean, you trade for Aaron Rodgers and he goes down 4 plays, suffers a season-ending injury 4 plays into his first season. That's obviously bad luck. But the problem is the Jets don't really own their own role in their struggles. And at the end of the day, I don't think you can say that this team's losing over and over and over is about bad luck, because it's not just that the Jets have missed the playoffs. It's that they've been completely uncompetitive. It's not just that they've been a bad team. It's that they haven't even been close to being good. This team has not woken up on the final day of the regular season with a shot to make the playoffs since 2015. During this 15-year stretch, that's only happened twice. It happened in 2011 and 2015, where they entered their final game with a mathematical chance to make the playoffs. During this whole stretch, there's only been one other time when they've woken up on their second to last game day of the season with a mathematical chance to make the playoffs. That was 2022. So this team isn't even coming close to making the playoffs. It's one thing to miss by a game a couple of times. They are consistently among the worst teams in the NFL. And it's because they keep doing the same stuff over and over. I mean, we're kind of at the beginning of the typical Jets cycle, which is the last thing didn't work. So now we're tearing it all down. We're collecting a lot of assets. It's going to be okay. Frequently, this means that the high-performing players go out. They get sent off for cap space or assets. That's happened. Then the next step of the process is they draft the quarterback. And one thing I want to be clear about is there's nothing wrong with drafting a quarterback. In fact, it's kind of essential. You got to hit on the quarterback to make it work in the NFL, at least for the long run. There's always a team somewhere that has shaky quarterback play that kind of that's able to have a good season, but you can't win consistently without the quarterback in the NFL. There's a difference, though, between drafting a quarterback and helping the quarterback grow. And maybe 5, 6, 7 years into the quarterback's career, then they start becoming the go-to guy. And what the Jets and a lot of other teams do, they expect the quarterback to magically fix all the problems. They expect the quarterback to solve all the issues. And then when the quarterback struggles out of the gate, again, teams frequently not honest about it. Team frequently looks for quick fixes. And that brings us to the third phase of any Jets build, when they just panic and start bringing in big names who are past their prime. We've seen this over and over. Now, I think it was more extreme during the Rodgers era than it's ever been in the past, but we've seen how many big names at the end of their careers have come to the Jets over the last 15 years. This has been like a chronic Jets thing where the Jets chase headlines, so they get these huge names. It's happened over and over and over. I mean, it's practically a cliche at this point. All the future Hall of Famers who ended their careers with the Jets. And that actually predates the last 15 years, but it's a sign. It shows you where the Jets are, where they bring in these guys who are huge names. The Jets get hyped. You always see on ESPN, NFL Network, wow, the Jets look so improved this offseason. And then the team fails. And we act like it's a shock. But it's really not a shock. These cycles need to end. What do the smart teams do in the NFL? They're never looking for the quick fix. Look, the quarterback's part of the equation, but it's not the entire equation. Teams like the Jets think that drafting a quarterback makes up for years of mismanagement. And it doesn't. You have to build the team properly. And I think far too often, the Jets view tearing down the roster as building the team properly. We always hear that. This is one thing we always hear with the Jets. When you're tearing it down, we're finally doing things the right way. Well, tearing down your team isn't building the right way. It means nothing unless you start actually building the right way. And that means focusing on getting coaches who are good at developing players. It means getting coaches who are good at developing cutting-edge schemes. It means getting coaches who understand how to build a culture. These things, may sound vague, they may sound general, but you see them on the good teams in the league. And it's not easy to find. And, we could talk chapter and verse about Woody Johnson constantly trying to find the next hot coordinator instead of going out and getting a proven coach. Well, it sounds like Aaron Glenn's going to be here going forward. So the hope has to be that Glenn starts improving, that the team he builds around him starts getting better. And that means investing in draft picks. That means scouting, finding hidden gems who are going to be available in free agency. It's not just the top end guys in free agency who help a team. Frequently, those are the worst signings because those are guys who get overpaid. You got to find guys from other teams who are ascending players who can help your team out, who can build your roster, who aren't as expensive, and investing in draft picks. The best teams in this league, they're the teams that are constantly adding picks. And they're not just adding them because they're trading away their best players. They're adding them because they're disciplined, because they're willing to trade down in the draft. They understand that drafts have a lot of talent, that there's depth in draft class. And hitting in the mid rounds is just as, if not more important than hitting in the early rounds. The Jets have to change the way they do business. I can't emphasize this enough. I kept saying it during this episode. I've been saying it over the last week. I've been saying it over the last year. I've been saying it over the last decade. What the Jets are doing isn't working. And it's true in terms of how they judge their coaches. It's true in terms of how they have failed to put the proper plan in front of their quarterbacks, but it's just been true in general. This team has operated in all the wrong ways, and it needs to start changing if they want to start improving. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Hope you have a great Tuesday, everybody, and send in your mailbag questions. Tomorrow we will do our weekly mailbag show. Can't wait to answer your questions. Talk to you then.